Its agony was so intense, victims couldn't even bear the weight of their clothes, or felt like they were walking on their eyeballs. And the cures? They were even more grotesque and bizarre than you could possibly imagine, ranging from cow dung poultices to geese stuffed with dismembered kittens. Today we're ripping back the curtain to uncover the most horrifying, mind-bending truths about the affliction once infamously known as the disease of kings. An ailment paradoxically seen as both a divine blessing and a coveted status symbol among the elite. Prepare yourself for a deep dive into the absolute craziest, most unbelievable hidden corners of medical and royal history. The disease of kings, an unbelievable status symbol. Gout, a disease causing excruciating pain, was astonishingly considered a privilege of the elite. Since ancient times, it was associated with a lavish lifestyle, with abundant food and drink that only the wealthy could afford. The ancient Greek physician Hippocrates even called it the arthritis of the rich. Incredibly, contracting gout was seen as a secret source of pride, undeniable proof of wealth and social standing. Ironically, the poor were denied this joy as they simply couldn't afford to feed such a luxurious illness. Gout transformed into a badge that elevated the patient's social standing, turning sufferers into some of history's first influencers. Unbearable pain, more horrifying than you can imagine. Despite its status as a symbol of prestige, the pain inflicted by gout was anything but posh. On the contrary, it was described as beyond horrifying. Thomas Sydenham, a 17th century clinician, wrote that the pain is like a bone being dislocated or a ligament being stretched or torn, sometimes like a dog gnawing at it. The agony was so exquisite that sufferers couldn't endure the weight of clothes or the shaking of the room caused by a person walking quickly in it. Another even more haunting description comes from Reverend Sidney Smith in the 19th century. Gout flare-ups were equaled only by walking on one's eyeballs. These vivid accounts reveal that gout was not just mere physical pain, but a tormenting experience that imprisoned the patient in utter, relentless suffering. Bizarre causes. According to Hippocrates, phlegm, wine, and excessive sex. According to Hippocrates, revered as the father of medicine, gout wasn't caused by uric acid but by accumulated phlegm in the joints. He believed this delicious and disagreeable disease stemmed from an excessive lifestyle, particularly eating too much, drinking too much wine, and excessive sexual intercourse. Hippocrates also observed that gout only appeared in adult males and famously declared that eunuchs do not suffer from gout, nor do they go bald. For women, he claimed they were immune to gout or baldness until menopause, after which they could contract both. This perspective, though scientifically flawed by modern standards, profoundly reflects ancient society's views on the causes of illness, directly linking it to morality and personal lifestyle. Fourth, Roman women also suffered from gout, a sign of lewdness. While Hippocrates believed women were immune to gout before menopause, this view shifted dramatically in ancient Rome. The first-century philosopher and statesman Seneca remarked, "In this age, women compete with men in every kind of lewdness. So why should we be surprised to see so many women suffering from gout?" This judgmental comment highlights that as Roman women began to adopt lifestyles similar to wealthy Roman men, embracing luxury and indulgence, they too started to suffer from diseases once considered male afflictions. This reveals a deeply prejudiced societal perspective on women and illness, where a disease was not just a medical issue but a damning marker of moral decay. Rich man's rheumatism, when illness had its own class system. Throughout history, a persistent jest claimed that gout's diagnosis depended on your social standing. If a poor person suffered from it, they simply called it rheumatism. But if a wealthy person experienced the same symptoms, they'd proudly declare it gout. The 18th century gentleman Earl of Chesterfield once wrote to his son, unsure if he had gout or rheumatism, "I wish it were a clear attack of gout, for that is a gentleman's disease. Whereas rheumatism is a coachman's or a porter's disease, who are out in all weathers and at all hours." Even in Ambrose Bierce's The Devil's Dictionary, Gout is defined as a physician's name for a rich man's rheumatism. This biting satire vividly underscores the stark class divisions in society and how even a painful illness could be transformed into a disturbing mark of social status. Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, one of Europe's most powerful monarchs, was so tormented by gout that it dramatically altered the course of history. He was often in such excruciating pain that he was unable to rule or lead his armies. In 1552, during a war with France, he suffered a severe gout attack that forced him to postpone his siege of Metz. This delay allowed the French to reinforce their defenses, prolonging the war and ultimately granting France a crucial victory. Finally, in 1556, the pain became utterly unbearable, forcing him to abdicate his throne and spend his last 2 years in a monastery, where he could endure his agony without the burden of governing. This stands as a grim reminder that even absolute power can be humbled by a tiny, relentless illness. William Pitt the Elder, Gout, and the American Revolution. You might not know it, but one man's gout indirectly ignited one of history's greatest revolutions, the American Revolution. William Pitt the Elder, a leading British statesman in the 18th century, famously missed critical parliamentary sessions due to crippling gout flare-ups. In 1764, while he was suffering from an attack, Parliament debated the Stamp Act. Upon recovery, Pitt successfully campaigned for the repeal of the Act, famously stating that the Americans are the sons, not the bastards, of England. However, another gout attack led to his absence from a different parliamentary session, where members agreed to impose high taxes on tea imported into the American colonies. This fateful decision directly led to the Boston Tea Party and subsequently the American Revolution. Who would have imagined that a painful disease could ultimately change the destiny of an entire continent? Benjamin Franklin and the dialogue with the gout. Even history's greatest minds weren't immune to gout's torment, and Benjamin Franklin found a uniquely witty way to cope with it. He penned a bizarre dialogue with his very own disease, personifying it as Madame Gout. In this exchange, Franklin lamented the suffering he endured, while Madame Gout bluntly chastised him. "You have eaten too freely and too much indulged your lazy feet." Franklin promised he would never play chess again, but will exercise and live temperately. However, Madame Gout knew perfectly well that as soon as Franklin felt better for a few days, he would relapse on his promise, and she would soon return. This dialogue not only showcases Franklin's sharp wit, but also reflects humanity's unending struggle with bad habits and their inescapable consequences. The most horrifying cure: goose stuffed with kittens. Among the myriad bizarre gout treatments throughout history, perhaps none is as utterly gruesome as a recipe from a 1518 German medical text called Spiegel der Arznei by Lorenz Fries. This horrifying method required you to roast a fat old goose and stuff it with chopped kittens, hog's grease, frankincense, wax, and rye flour. After roasting, you were instructed to eat all and anoint the juice that runs out on the aching joints. A kitten-stuffed turkey for a Renaissance Thanksgiving, it sounds truly sickening. While there's debate whether kittens was a mistranslation, the mere presence of wax and frankincense in this culinary concoction is strange enough to send shivers down your spine. This stands as clear proof of the profound lack of medical knowledge and the desperate lengths humanity would go to find a cure for an agonizing disease. Other bizarre cures, from cow dung to dog licking. Beyond the kitten-stuffed goose, history records a bewildering array of other, unimaginable gout treatments. The 16th century physician Andrew Boord once suggested that fermented cow dung should be baked and applied to the joints, then wrapped in cabbage leaves. In the 18th century, miracle cures were widely sold, promising to cure gout, scurvy, and rheumatism, but in reality, they were just vitamin C, only effective for scurvy. There was even the idea that making music for gout would relieve pain, or that a dog licking the inflamed area would reduce pain, some even letting dogs sleep in their beds to feel the pain their owner experienced. One story even recounted a dog that also suffered from gout due to its excessive alcohol consumption. The sheer, absurd diversity of these methods vividly demonstrates the desperation and the profound medical misconceptions of the past. Gout as a blessing, prolonging life and correcting misdemeanors. One of the most peculiar and ironic beliefs about gout was that it was actually considered a blessing. Many 17th, 18th, and 19th century writers argued that gout was not fatal and could even lead to a longer life. It was hailed as the most desirable gout and a powerful corrector of intemperance. A 1691 letter even argued in favor of gout, stating that patients should patiently endure the outbreak rather than try to eliminate it. Incredibly, the author also wrote that when a man over 50 contracted gout, his friends would come to him, feast, and rejoice in the promising prolongation of his life and the likely addition of 20 or 30 years to his lifespan. This is a stunning paradox, where agony was seen as a gateway to longevity and a stern warning against a life of excess. Gout as a filthy aphrodisiac. Another equally bizarre belief from the 16th to 18th centuries was that gout could somehow act as an aphrodisiac. Michel de Montaigne, a renowned essayist, famously claimed that as a man's legs weakened, his genitals became fuller, better nourished, and stronger. A Dutch writer in 1693 even reasoned that gout was good because it allowed men to rest their reproductive organs due to being too much in pain to walk and having to lie still. This utterly false belief reflects a profound misunderstanding of human physiology and a bizarre quest for explanations for medical phenomena. As disgusting and wrong as it sounds, this perspective showcases how society at the time attempted to twist a disease into something beneficial in the most unimaginable ways. Foot grasper and the big toe. Gout's peculiar preference. Gout has a distinct preference for the feet, notoriously attacking the big toe. Ancient Greeks called gout patagras, meaning foot grasper, because the disease would often settle and make itself cozy in the patient's big toe. Modern doctors explain this preference by noting that extremities, hands, feet, are not as warm as other body parts, making it easier for urate crystals to accumulate there. The big toe, being used most frequently, is even more susceptible. Gout's peculiar focus on the feet and big toe has remained a prominent characteristic of the disease for centuries, intrinsically linked to tales of the agony and mobility struggles of kings and nobles. Footwear and deadly heat therapy. In the early days of medicine, doctors devised numerous strange devices and therapies to treat gout. For centuries, the gout stool was used to alleviate inflammation, though it was merely a normal stool for resting the feet, offering no miraculous cure. Patients' feet were also commonly wrapped in flannel, and they were told to simply wait for the gout attack to pass. By the early 20th century, doctors even designed a glass slipper to apply heat to the affected area. While heat might offer temporary relief, it was incredibly dangerous. Heat could cause uric acid to escape its cozy home in the joints and travel directly to the kidneys, leading to kidney failure and even death. A seemingly harmless treatment harbored a silent, deadly risk. Gout and gender. Women allowed to suffer after menopause. Gout has often been considered a male disease, and modern science has uncovered the biological reason behind this. Estrogen, the female hormone, protects women from hyperuricemia, high uric acid in the blood, making them less likely to suffer from gout. However, as women age and go through menopause, estrogen levels drop sharply, significantly increasing their risk of developing gout. This explains why historically gout was primarily linked to men, but older women are not immune to the disease of kings. This scientific truth helps unravel the mystery behind gender disparities in disease. Genetics and the alarming surge. Today, gout is not just a disease of lavish lifestyles, it also has a significant genetic component. Doctors have discovered that up to 80% of gout sufferers come from families with a history of the disease. This demonstrates that nepotism sometimes works against people too. More alarmingly, the number of gout cases is skyrocketing, especially in the United States, with 8.3 million people affected. As the population ages and body weight increases, with too much delicious food and drink and exercise for next year, doctors predict these numbers will continue to rise. This shows that a disease once thought to belong to a bygone era of luxury is tragically becoming a modern public health crisis. The rotting death of Henry VIII. when gout was not the only horror. King Henry VIII, one of history's most feared monarchs, was also famously afflicted with gout. While gout wasn't the sole cause of his gruesome death, it significantly contributed to his extreme decline in health. His body became grotesquely swollen, emitting such a foul stench that his attendants often fainted. A leg wound from a jousting accident never healed, transforming into a continuously oozing, festering ulcer so rotten that his bones were visible. Even after his death, the indignity didn't end. His coffin, due to its enormous size and inadequate ceiling, swelled and burst open, spilling foul fluids onto the chapel floor. Contemporary records even claim that stray dogs discovered and licked up the abhorrent effluvium. This was a death both horrifying and humiliating for an absolute monarch, a chilling reminder of the impermanence of life and the limits of human power. Henry VIII and the fateful meal, death by food craving. Beyond gout, history records other bizarre deaths of kings, often linked to seemingly minor habits or decisions. King Henry I, successor to William II, was famous for his enormous army of illegitimate children, yet had only 2 legitimate ones. His death, however, was shockingly mundane and peculiar. He is believed to have died after eating too many lampreys, a favorite dish he had been advised by his physician to avoid. Sometimes it's the smallest desires that lead to the greatest downfall, illustrating the fragility of life, even for those at the pinnacle of power. George II, the unbelievable death in the toilet. The death of King George II in 1760 stands as one of the most peculiar in British royal history. One morning he awoke and went to the toilet. Moments later, his attendants heard a loud crash. Essentially, George fell into the toilet and broke it, after which he was carried back to bed and pronounced dead due to internal injuries. An unimaginable end for a king, underscoring the randomness and suddenness of fate, that even the most powerful could face the most undignified and awkward of endings. Edward VII and George V, fate repeating through smoke. History sometimes repeats itself with cruel irony, as in the case of Edward VII and his son, George V. Edward VII, Queen Victoria's son, was known for his lavish lifestyle and heavy smoking habit. He died in 1910 from acute bronchitis, most likely a direct consequence of smoking up to 30 cigarettes a day. Remarkably, his son, George V, famously hated his father's extravagant ways and vowed never to repeat them. Yet, ironically, he also died of bronchitis, the very same disease that claimed his father's life. A bitter end, demonstrating that no matter how hard humans try, fate sometimes pushes us into similar tragedies, repeating the mistakes we once yearned to avoid. This vividly demonstrates a life shock and haunting impermanence. Which story shocked you the most? Is there anything you'd like to delve deeper into? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more unique and dramatic history stories from Mr. Q. See you in the next video, where we'll continue to unveil the hidden truths behind history.